So we have a number of different citation systems in different fields. APA tends to be used in a lot of social science fields. Sometimes you might see something else that's kind of similar to APA. I haven't really seen it, but supposedly there's something called ASA and sometimes in sociology. You might have heard of Harvard style. Harvard is an old style. It's kind of like the APA. Harvard used to be kind of a general default style that was used in a lot of fields, especially if you didn't know, in social sciences and humanities. It's less common now. If you don't know what to use, if you're not sure, ask your professor what style he or she prefers. Or you can use APA or Harvard as kind of a default. Or Chicago. Chicago is a nice default if you don't know what to use, especially in humanities fields. And we saw numerical citation systems, which are common in various STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, math. They tend to use those kinds of numerical systems, and there are a lot of them in different fields of STEM. In medicine, you see an AMA style that's kind of like the STEM fields. Nursing uses either APA or Vancouver. Vancouver, actually, there are two different flavors of Vancouver. One is a numerical system, one is a parenthetical system. Don't worry, unless you're in nursing. If you're in business, by the way, in business, I think they tend to use APA or sometimes Chicago. Law fields use either Blue Book, and there's, I think, something similar called the Yale system, kind of similar. And there are many others. Again, APA and Chicago can be nice defaults if you don't know what to use. Now let's look at some more of the details of the parenthetical elements, the parenthetical citations in humanities and social sciences. You notice here, for example, when you have multiple authors, you separate the items with comma or semicolon, depending on the system. Here we have Gernsbacher, and then Kinch, and then McNamara. So you may not do this very much in college papers, but if you do, if you're citing several sources at one time, it's usually in the order, alphabetical order. Gernsbacher, then Kinch, and then McNamara. Alphabetical order according to the first author family name. Now, there are cases when you might have research articles with a lot of authors, 3 or more, especially in social science and science research. This will vary according to the different systems, but a common thing to do, if it's like 2 authors, if it's like Gernsbacher and Kinch, 1998, you can do that, the and. Or with the APA, they use the and symbol, it's called an ampersand. But when you get to 3 or more, it's common to say et al. And then in the in references, you list all of the authors. But for the in-text citation, et al., that is a Latin abbreviation for et alia. And it's like etc. So etc. means and others. And in Latin, cetera or cetera means other similar things. And alia means other different things. In other words, other different people. Alia is actually kind of like alien, somebody or something who's different. Alien. So it's different other things. So that's a common abbreviation for when you have 3 or more authors. Now, it depends actually in the field. Chicago, I think it's like 3 or more, and I think for most systems like MLA and others, it's 3 or more authors. In APA, it used to be for 3 or more authors. Now it's kind of complicated, and in some fields, your professor in a linguistics class might be happy with the older APA style or the newer APA style. This is, okay, so in psychology research, you might have a lot of collaborative projects with the same or similar authors, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 authors on a paper, and some of them write another paper, comes out in the same year or the next year or whatever. Maybe 5 of them are in this paper, and another, 3 of them or 7 of them are on that paper. It's kind of confusing. So you might list like the first 6 names the first time, and the next time for an in-text reference, the Smith et al. And you might see that. In older APA, it was just et al. For 3 or more anyway. I use citation software that does all this for me, so I don't worry about it. And I'm not citing psychology papers a whole lot. So unless you're citing psychology papers or papers with a lot of authors, this may not be a worry. If you just want to say, okay, 3 or more authors et al., that's probably okay. Most your professors may not care if it's an undergraduate or college paper. So those are some interesting points about these systems. Okay, end references. Let's look at the end references, or works cited, sometimes called. What differences do you see? What things are ordered differently? What are some differences that you see? Okay, social sciences. Is author's name or names, and then the year. Year is in parentheses to kind of highlight it. That's kind of important to us. What else do you notice about the names? The personal names are abbreviated, initialized. This is one thing about the APA I hate. It's actually easy when I'm typing it. I usually use APA when I type my own papers. It's easy when I'm typing it, but it's actually kind of annoying because you can't tell, especially with Asian names. Okay, so the family name or last name is written out, family name first. First names or personal names or given names are abbreviated, initialized. In one field, you might have 2 people with J. Cole, C-O-L-E, and then the first initial is J. And there are 2 linguists in the US who are J. Cole. Now, when it comes to Korean and Chinese names, this gets really, really annoying and confusing. You could have lots of E.J. Kims or C.J. Lees or something. I know I have 2 friends named Hee-Young Lee. One is a professor at Kodae, one's a professor at Yonsei. They're both friends of mine. And it's going to be confusing if you just reduce it to H. Lee. Which H. Lee? Because there could be lots of H. Lees or H.K. Lees in the same field in Korea, or Koreans who are working at foreign universities. So I think if it's not in the book, look at my website. I've got a guide for how to do this, especially for foreign names, Korean names, Chinese names in APA. Author or author's year, the title of an article, if it's an article, and then if it's the name of the publication is in italic font, like the first one, document design, and that's the first volume. The volume is in italics. That's a weird thing about APA. And then the issue number. So let's say you have like this, could be a magazine, could be a research journal. If they have 4 issues a year, that's 1 volume. So issue 1. So volume 1, issue 1. So that's the 1 and the 1. And then the page numbers. And if it's books, we'll see examples of books. Here, the second one, the Gernsbacher, is a book. Now, a weird thing about APA, kind of easy to type, the book is language comprehension and structure building, so you don't capitalize everything in book titles in APA, which is kind of nice. Just the first word. And then rootledge, and I don't know if I have it here, I should have the location. So for books, you need the location of the publisher and then the name of the publisher. You can go to my website and see, or look at the next section of my book with which is a more detailed guide to APA. MLA, it's a little different. The years are less important in humanities. So MLA, in MLA, the years are less important, very unimportant. The titles are important. So the titles are kind of highlighted with quotation marks, and then the year and page numbers at the end. And it used to be the case, so the different versions, I think in MLA 7 you had to indicate whether you were using the print version of the source or an electronic version of the source, if there were 2 versions. In MLA 8, that's different now. These change every few years, and MLA 8 is actually a very nice system, very logical. If it's from the web source, you have to put the URL and maybe the date you accessed it in MLA, especially MLA 7. For the names, the first author is Lisbeth de Gand. So family name first. Make sure you put family names first. And in the in-text citations, put the family names, not personal names. Don't cite Jim or Alice. No, it's family names, last names like Gernsbacher or Smith or Jones, not, Bill or Fred or William. Students make that mistake every year in my classes. The titles are generally capitalized. You capitalize important words. So when you capitalize only the first word, like in a sentence or in the name of a book in an APA citation, that's called sentence case. It's like the case refers to whether it's capital or small letter, uppercase, lowercase. That's sentence case. Now, in most systems like MLA in Chicago, for titles you use title case, where you capitalize all the nouns and verbs, all the important words that are 5 letters or longer, which I think is stupid, but it's so common in English, different style books and such. So you'll notice in MLA there's slight differences in the punctuation, the format, what's in italics, where you have commas, and in the citations and the in references, such. You've got to pay attention to those little things. And that's something you have to learn on your own. The Chicago example, again, in the in-text citations, I've got names and years. You could include page numbers if it's relevant. The works cited, you notice that the in-text citations sort of look a bit like APA, but the Chicago works cited or in references look a bit more like MLA. They look kind of like MLA, at least MLA 7. So you can easily go between MLA and Chicago. So notice the author, the order, although it's actually one difference in the order. It's author, year, and then title in the formal Chicago system. Now, if you're using the Chicago footnote style, it is different. So this is confusing. Chicago is really complicated because if you're using footnotes, then the date or year goes at the end of the citation. So you cite things in the text with footnotes, and then the in citations, it's a little different. Okay, look it up on your own. I'm not going to talk in detail about the science and engineering systems. They are a little different, but often the order of the in references is in citation order, the order in which it's cited in the text. In the next section of my book, there is a brief guide to APA, and I think then there is a brief guide to Chicago. I'll talk about the APA because I'm mainly going to point out the things you need to pay attention to when you cite different kinds of sources. In my class, you might not be citing a lot of academic research article papers, maybe, but just in case. So here I've got a little bit about in-text citations, like when it happens when you have like multiple authors, a source with multiple authors. Now what happens if you have a source that has no author? In various systems, not in APA in Chicago and others, it might be a title, cite the title of the source. For example, there's a, it's not too often, but you might cite a reference work. Okay, you wouldn't normally cite a dictionary or encyclopedia, but if it's a reference work like this has no author. It's by a bunch of people at Oxford. So as a linguist, I might cite this if I'm writing something. So in the in-text citation, I'm going to cite the title of this. And in the in-references, it's going to be alphabetized according to the title. Direct quotations, you usually would paraphrase or summarize it. If for some reason you do need a direct quotation, you would also include the page number. That's for APA, Chicago, MLA. You need a page number for a direct quotation. Anytime you directly quote something in quotation marks. And now that's more common in humanities writing. It's less common in social science education writing. And it's done if there's something interesting or unique or important about the way it was said, or the exact words are important for some reason. Otherwise, we usually paraphrase it. Okay, multiple authors for the in references. This walks you through with some examples for the in references when something has multiple authors, books, academic journal articles, popular peer articles. And I need to point out one weird thing about APA. Only APA does this. If it's an academic research article or if it's a book, the in references just have the year. That's it. If it's a popular peer article, APA distinguishes popular peer articles like newspapers or magazines you'd buy at a bookstore. APA distinguishes popular peer articles from the academic journals in that in the in references, you put the date either a month or if it's a monthly issue, like a monthly news magazine or monthly popular magazine, like if I'm citing PC Magazine, I used to read that. It's fun. PC Magazine, so it's a monthly magazine, I think. So I might put 2010, comma, November. Or if it's a newspaper, for example, it's daily, so November 14. So APA is kind of strange because in the end references you put a date for a popular periodical. No other system does that. Finally, in my book, I've got a little information for other things. Occasionally you might have an online source where there's no date or no author. Newspaper titles. In the in-text citation, if it's a newspaper article and there's no author, no writer, you might kind of abbreviate the title. And instead of the author, in the in-text citation, you've got an abbreviated title and then the year. And especially if you're using Chicago, that might be more common to cite newspapers. So that's in here, or go to my website. Go to my website and just search for APA, search for MLA, search for Chicago. I've got especially detailed guides on my website to the APA and to the newer version of the MLA, MLA 8. So go to my website if you want detailed explanation for that. I've also got guides on my website for Chicago. Although Chicago is confusing because there's the Chicago footnote style and then the formal Chicago in-text style. So for APA, MLA, Chicago, or whatever system you want to use, you need to pay attention to the format of this in-reference information because they are picky about these things. The order of items in the in-reference and the punctuation and what's in italics and little things like that. You need to learn on your own. If we had a live class, I could maybe guide you through some more examples more easily. It's kind of up to you to learn on your own. I guess if you have any real big questions, you can email me. Otherwise, it's best to look them. Oh, I should say one thing. There are websites that will do references for you, citation generators. Yeah, you can use those, but I would recommend not using them, especially in college, for two reasons. One, it's important that you do this yourself. You learn to do this yourself and learn how APA works or learn how Chicago works on your own so you can do it on your own. It's important that you do it yourself so you learn how these things work. And occasionally these online citation generators, they might give you, okay, Chicago, but I've seen students try them and sometimes those websites will do things wrong. They might have mistakes. So when MLA 8 first came out, a student of mine was trying to use one of those websites to create MLA 8 citations and the format was really wrong. The format was messed up. It was capitalizing everything and it shouldn't have. So be careful with those kinds of websites. Learn how to do it on your own. That's the best thing. All right, in the next video we'll talk about finding sources in Google and finding sources for your paper. See you later.